Just by, first of all, I want to see I just want you to see, actually, that AP Human Geography usually consists of its test. So, for example, when we're talking about, the test, Unit 1, is usually like 1 to, I want to say it's like 3 to 7% of the test questions are over Chapter 1. Okay, Chapter 2 and 3 is usually 13 to 17%. Chapter 4, 5, 6, and 7. So that is everything from culture all the way to ethnicity. Okay, makes up 13 to 17%. To give you an idea, political geography and development pretty much make up 13 to 17% on their own. Agriculture, 13 to 17% on their own. So you can see, culture, not the most asked about. However, it's the ones that, in my opinion, I think are less, they're not as easy to guess on because it's either, again, you either know it or you don't, okay? So we're going to go over a couple examples. First of all, culture, corresponding obviously with our book, Chapter 4. The very first thing, to give you an idea of, make sure obviously you know what culture is, but additionally the two major differences are going to be, of course, pop, and folk culture. And if you remember, you have like a chart, and if you don't have it, and if you'd like to pick it up from me, obviously you can do so, but it's actually still in the blue hanging folder. Pop and folk culture are going to be distinguished by several different things. For example, which one is homogeneous? It's actually found in a homogeneous area. Okay, folk, very good. Folk, is homogeneous. Homogeneous, homo means same, homogeneous means that the people are likely very similar to one another, which means that their folk culture is going to be shared, which means that pop culture is going to be probably found in heterogeneous, societies. Give me an example of a heterogeneous area in the United States. New York, yeah, I would agree. New York City? Give me an example of a homogeneous area. The place where in the United States? Oh, Salt Lake City is a good one. Pennsylvania, maybe? Yeah, Utah. Let's use Utah. Okay? Because of the Mormon population, that's a great example where they are largely homogeneous, which means that their culture is probably not going to extend out from there. New York City, quite heterogeneous. If I ask you for pop versus folk, which one is more likely to be found in an LDC? Folk culture. Good. Folk culture is more likely to be found in an LDC, which, by the way, a lot of times they're going to ask you a question where they're basically asking you to think about that concept. These are more likely to help, folk culture because they have many, tribes, for example. Okay. Oops, sorry. All right. So many isolated tribes. For example, one of the practice questions on last week's test asked about what area of the world probably has the most languages still. Okay, when we discussed, basically there's about 7,000 languages left in the world, and about 2,000 of them are located in this country and this country. Okay, the options, first of all, every option included India except for one, which means that extra one was a distractor. Okay, you know if an answer is used, in every single example except for maybe one, that's probably not your correct answer. So India was a given. It was basically telling you that India was a good example of an area, that had a lot of languages. The other one was Papua New Guinea, and Papua New Guinea is also an LDC. Most of the area is isolated, which means it has little contact, with really MDCs. So for example, if you think of the linguists in India and all of the tribes, although they had been influenced by the colonialists, at the same time, they definitely were not MDCs, they weren't like pop culture driven. The guys that were like, dancing with the, homemade weapons and homemade, instruments and all of that sort of thing. Definitely LDC, which means, pop culture is usually found in an MDC. What is the purpose of folk culture typically? Folk culture purpose? okay, maybe to preserve like lifestyle or things like that, but the actual culture itself, the culture a lot of times has a lot to do with the environment. So, for example, maybe things that have to do with solstices. If we were going to talk about, okay, folk cultures, folk cultural, I don't know, festivals, that type of thing, it might be harvest festivals, it might be the environment. Additionally, just about daily life. So, for example, things, okay, that are just daily life driven, especially folk songs. Whereas your pop culture, what is the purpose really for making pop culture? Financially driven, which means that the actual purpose, the origin, right, okay, where it starts, okay, is a known person, and typically they're wanting to make money. Not always, okay, but typically money is involved. Okay. On the other hand, okay, your origin in a folk culture, you probably know it's going to be in an LDC, in a homogenous society, but do you know the founder typically? You usually have an unknown origin. Okay? And therefore, it's usually not for commercial purposes. Okay, good. If I were to ask you about, okay, just cultural diffusion, when we talk about cultural diffusion, okay, that is an answer that I would, if it were me and I was looking at the AP test, and there was a question that asked me about the type of diffusion being used, okay, I would not select cultural diffusion, because cultural diffusion for this class is a really broad term that can be broken down into a more specific type. So instead of choosing cultural diffusion, I would actually look a little bit deeper, because they're probably wanting a more specific type. When we're talking about cultural diffusion, there are two main types. What is one of them? Let's talk folk culture. How does it usually diffuse? Relocation, yeah. Okay, relocation diffusion. How quickly does it spread? As fast as the person, right, who moves. Okay, cultural diffusion, one type is relocation diffusion, and that, okay, is how folk culture, okay, diffuses. Okay. Now, there's no like little subset underneath relocation diffusion. So if relocation diffusion spreads, okay, relatively slowly, only as fast as the person carrying it, then what is the other type? Relocation. Okay, you're close. Hierarchical is a subset of the one I'm thinking of. Expansion. Very good. Expansion diffusion. Think about just the word expansion, diffusion. Okay, it is expanding, which means, okay, we actually call this in the book, they call it a snowballing process. Okay, snowballing process, the idea that it starts in one place, okay, but then it starts to get bigger, okay, as it's passed around, okay, and as it, okay, basically continues to roll down the hill, it just continues to get bigger and spreads further out, okay, etc. Okay, there are three different types of expansion diffusion. One of them, someone already said, which is hierarchical. Okay, now, we have to be kind of careful, I would say, with hierarchical, because it can mean a couple things. Okay, what's the most obvious meaning? Passed down from, okay, authority. Okay, good. So, it is spread from authority to those less powerful. I would agree with that. Now, that does not always mean like a government person. Who is maybe someone that is seen as an authority, who would influence maybe the way that we dress? Okay. What'd you say? Gucci. Okay, good. What else? Okay, singers, celebrities, right? Okay, MTV Music Awards, I think were on like this weekend, right? And now, like, that's what was on the news. This is whatever wore. Okay, are they necessarily authorities? No, but are they authorities that people who are maybe less powerful look up to in terms of an authority on that one subject? Yes. Okay, so remember the whole like celebrity effect there. Okay, the other example though of hierarchical that's really, really important to remember is that it could also be from a large city diffusing to a small town. Okay, a large city to a small town. Okay, and sometimes even an MDC to an LDC, but definitely a large city to a small town. So, for example, if this was your city, and we'll say a new song came out, likely the people in the immediate area around it would hear it first, and then it would be picked up by people around it. As you move out into the rural area, they are probably going to hear it a little bit later. Now, what has actually caused that to go away? Because today, a song can be heard in a large city, and it can actually diffuse really, really, really quickly to a small town. Space, time, compression through radio, right, internet, etc. Okay, good. So large city to small town is usually your hierarchical. All right, good. Another one, after hierarchical is what? Who? Deanna? No. Who? What's one of the other ones? Contagious. Thank you. Contagious is spreading without any sort of boundaries or barriers. Okay, and it spreads quickly. Example. The example in the book that they gave you was AIDS, right? If you think about contagious diffusion, right, if that one person that has the HIV virus then spreads it to 3 people, and then those 3 people spread it to another 3 people each, that is definitely going to be your contagious diffusion. However, I would say that there are probably some limits. What are some limitations? Okay, think AIDS, think HIV. What about like just abstinence, right? Protection, that type of thing that people have figured out, okay? So they have learned maybe, needle, I don't know, they have the needle campaigns now, where people take like their used needles in because people were spreading AIDS a lot of times through reusing drug needles, okay? Yes, blood transfusions are now checked. All of those things are going to limit it. Yes. That's right. It's not the best example of contagious diffusion because there are limitations. The only one, and I told you guys kind of what I thought, and there could be other ones out there, but I'm not sure what they are. If you find them, let me know. Probably the best example is what? Common cold. Very good. Is there a vaccine? No. Okay. Common cold, easily spread, as everybody starts coughing and sniffing. Okay, good. Easily spread, from one person to another. Okay, there is, doesn't matter whether you're higher status or lower status. No, it has nothing to do with it. Okay, good. All right, and then the last one, and this is the one that people sometimes struggle with a little bit. Yes, stimulus.